Big chance to follow a big win with another one tonight on the road for the Pitt basketball team, plus the first game of Pitt's 2024 football schedule has been announced. And let's talk about wide receivers a little bit. We're gonna hit a bunch of different topics. This is gonna be one of those potpourri, Pitt-pourri episodes where we touch on a bunch of different things. Basketball tonight at Georgia Tech, the release of the football schedule in painstakingly slow fashion, and then kind of what's been going on with Pitt and wide receivers this offseason, whether they've done enough to add to that wide receiver room. So we're going to touch on a lot of topics, get you going here on a Tuesday on the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Tuesday. It's the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, the place where you can get all the Pitt sports coverage. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting, all right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and of course the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find. A great place to hang out and talk with other Pitt fans about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports, whether it's football, it's basketball, it's recruiting. We provide the content, gives you a lot to think about and read and talk about, and then we give you the forum to discuss it. You go to the message boards and talk to other Pitt fans and get in those conversations. It's always fun to do that. It's one of the most fun places to hang out is the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And then, of course, our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where we put all of our Pitt video content, whether it's these daily morning Pitt videos, our weekly live show on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. that we do every week, or post-game shows like we're going to have tonight after the Georgia Tech game. All the road games, we'll be doing post-game shows right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. When the game ends tonight, flip over to the internet, turn on your internet machine, and check into the live post-game show. It looks like this. It's me talking to you, but the fun thing about the live post-game shows is you get to be a part of it too. You can join the conversation through the chat screen. You can put in your comments and your questions, and we'll have a little back and forth. We'll talk about the game and what we see out of the Panthers tonight at Georgia Tech. And let's start with that game. Georgia Tech comes into this one at 9-9 overall. They're 2-5 in the ACC. Pitt is also 2-5 in the ACC, so a little bit of a similarity there. Georgia Tech is ranked, I think, in the 130s in the net rankings. They've got two wins, two really good wins, two quad one wins. One coming 2 games ago when they won at Clemson in double overtime, and then they also beat Duke at home. They beat Duke in Atlanta, so they've got a little bit of overlap with Pitt there. Pitt has one quad one win when they went to Duke, obviously, on Saturday and won that game, but they don't have two like Georgia Tech has. So that separates the Panthers and the Yellow Jackets a little bit, but there are some similarities there. Both of these teams shoot a ton of threes. Georgia Tech has taken the second most three-point attempts in the ACC, and they are second to your Pitt Panthers. They don't shoot them very well, though, even though, despite the high volume, Georgia Tech is actually next to last in the conference in three-point shooting percentage. Overall field goal percentage, they're slightly better than Pitt, but not from outside, even though they shoot a ton from outside. Miles Kelly is the lead guard. He's going to be the one to watch, or he's the lead scorer. It'll be interesting to see what kind of defensive assignment Pitt chooses to go with on Kelly. He's good. He's averaging 15 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. He's their best player, and he's the one to watch. Will Bub Carrington be guarding him? Will Ishmael Leggett be guarding him? Will there be situations where Zach Austin will be guarding him? I still haven't forgotten how Zach Austin told us over the summer that he wants to guard 1 through 5. So, is he going to get that opportunity here tonight? I'm guessing not. I'm guessing one of the guards will do it. But Georgia Tech isn't particularly a large team. Like, I was looking over their roster, their big guy, their top producing big guy is Bai Ndongo. He's a 6'9" freshman, and he's their top producing big. That's probably Fede Federico's assignment. He's 6'9", which is not small by any stretch of the imagination, but that's sort of the extent of their size or their contributing size, and so there shouldn't be a huge size advantage there, but it's going to be a tough defensive assignment for Federico and Guillermo Diaz-Graham as they try to guard Nongo. So we'll see what happens with that. For Pitt, the key will always come down to what it always comes down to. Is Blake Hinson making shots? Are the guards producing? And they really were. I mean, that's what happened on Saturday. Our guy Steven Gertz pointed it out that, Ishmael Leggett was awesome on Saturday. And one of the keys to that victory, and probably gets overshadowed or has gotten overshadowed a bit by Blake Hinson coming alive and making 7 out of 7 3-pointers, by Jalen Lowe scoring 17 one game after he scored 20, and really continuing his ascendancy as a freshman who is, or I shouldn't say ascendancy, I don't even know if that's a word, but his ascent as a freshman who is really growing and growing into a really strong role. And then Ishmael Leggett and Bub Carrington producing as well from the backcourt. And that's what it's always going to come down to for this team. And if you happen to get 9 points out of Federico on a given night, if you get 6 out of Will Jeffers like they did in the one game, if you get 10 or 11 out of Guillermo Diaz-Graham, that's great. You need those things. Somebody else is going to have to produce. But those 4 guys, Hinson, Lowe, Carrington, Leggett, they're the keys. They have to play well. This Georgia Tech team is one of 3 teams in the ACC right now that's getting outscored on the season. There's only 3 of them, and Georgia Tech is right there. This is very much a winnable game. They've lost, trying to do the math, the bulk of 4 of their losses, I think, have come since Christmas Eve. And so as the competition level has gone up for Georgia Tech, their struggles have increased, and it's become more of a challenge, and they've not risen to that occasion. This is a team that can be beat if Blake Hinson can make his shots, and if Jalen Lowe keeps doing what he's doing, if Ishmael Leggett keeps doing what he did at Duke, and if Bub Carrington keeps rounding into form. And that's a lot of what we talked about yesterday, and it's a lot of what we talked about after the game on Saturday. But it's because it's true. It's who this team is, and it's what this team needs. And if they can get it tonight, if Blake Hinson can be, good again, and he doesn't necessarily need to be 7 of 7 good, but as close to that as you can get would be really nice. And if Leggett and Lowe and Carrington keep playing like they have been, this should be a win for Pitt and an opportunity to stack wins and start winning some games back to back. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. But we will be live after the game to talk about it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notifications. That way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content. On the football side, there was a touch of news yesterday, and just a touch, 1/12 of the news yesterday when the ACC started its schedule rollout, which remarkably, unbelievably, is going to take 3 days for the 2024 football schedule. You have got to be kidding me. They announced week 1 yesterday. They announced they're going to announce the Thursday night and Friday night games today, and then the full schedule will be revealed on Wednesday. This is ridiculous. What are you doing? I don't know. I know it's a content grab, right? They're farming for content. They're trying to stretch it out to create as much content as they can and create engagement over 3 days as opposed to 1 day. But I can honestly tell you, you're going to get the same level of engagement and the same level of content and the same level of everything. And really, I think there's far more risk here than there is reward, because I think you're just going to annoy people that you're spreading it out like this. This is ridiculous. Just announce the schedule. You're not the NFL. You're not the SEC. And I don't even know if the SEC would care enough to do something like this or think so highly of itself to do something like this. Announce all the games. Announce all the games. Pitt's playing Kent State on August 31st. I think we knew that. I know the ACC announced a handful of, actually, was it a handful of conference games? How many conference games did they actually announce? 1, 2. 2 conference games that they announced yesterday. No, one conference game. That's a Georgia logo, not a Georgia Tech logo. Clemson is playing Georgia on Saturday the 31st. There was one conference game in week 1. Boston College at Florida State on Labor Day. Everything else is a non-conference game that I assume, much like Pitt-Kent State was already announced. So why even make a big deal about this? We already have these games known. We already knew that Pitt was playing Kent State. I assume Miami and Florida already knew they were playing each other on August 31st. I assume that Carolina and Minnesota and NC State and Western Carolina, actually, and Stanford and TCU, these games didn't just get planned a day ago. Virginia and Richmond or whatever it is, Syracuse and Ohio. As I look over this, SMU and UConn, these games were all scheduled. We knew about all these games. Maybe the Boston College Florida State game was not known. But other than that, you didn't need to have a special announcement for this. Yes, I do want to know the schedule. Yes, I think a lot of people would like to know the schedule. They can start making travel plans for the fall. But all you're doing is annoying people by delaying it this long and stretching it out over 3 days when it really doesn't even need to be 3 hours. Just tweet out, send 14 tweets with the schedule for each team, or one master tweet with all the schedules in one, and that's it. And you can have a show on the ACC network breaking down all the schedules. That's great, but you don't have to do it like this. This is ridiculous. All right. Wide receivers. I want to talk about wide receivers because we didn't really get a chance to talk about this yesterday. Tyreek Robinson, a wide receiver in the 2024 recruiting class from Shreveport, Louisiana, committed to the Panthers on Sunday. Took an official visit, and that sort of made he knew he was going to commit. I think he already had it planned that he was going to commit, and he made it official on Sunday at the end of his official visit. He's joining the Panthers, so that's recruit number, I think, 20 in the class of 2024. These are the guys who are seniors right now. A lot of them, 9 of them, I think, already enrolled and are on campus right now taking classes. Robinson obviously joined those other 10 who are enrolling in June, and that'll make it 11 enrolling in June. So they're adding more guys to this class. He'll officially sign in February. They had a tight end also visiting over the weekend. It doesn't look like they're getting him, or maybe not even pursuing him. I'm not entirely sure, but he did not commit from all that we can tell. But the fact that they had him visit at least leads me to believe that they're open to, taking another high school prospect. I think getting another high school receiver was important to the coaching staff. They only signed one wide receiver prospect in December. That was Cameron Montero from Brockton, Massachusetts, a guy who played some wide receiver in high school, but not a ton. Moved around and played a lot of different positions, wildcat quarterback and that sort of thing, and played some receiver. But he was the only guy they signed. And I think Taekwon Underwood and the rest of the Pitt coaches were hoping to get more than one high school wide receiver prospect. They obviously went into the transfer portal for some options, but and they signed 4 high school guys last year. But I think they still wanted to add another 1 or 2 from the high school ranks to try and fill things out here, and build up that wide receiver room and build that foundation with younger players who could, create something to build on over the next few years. So they got Cameron Montero, like I said, out of the high school ranks. They got Tyreek Robinson now out of the high school ranks. And then they added 2 transfers. Sincere Lee from Western Carolina and Raphael Williams, who's coming in from San Diego State, but before that was at Western Carolina. And it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see some of this emphasis on Western Carolina players. I shouldn't call it an emphasis on Western Carolina players, but Cade Bell obviously has familiarity with those guys. much like the offensive line coach, Darvo, he's worked with him before, so he's got familiarity. So he wants to bring some players he's familiar with. He believes, obviously, that Sincere Lee can play at this level. He believes that Raphael Williams can play at this level. Williams is a guy who was at Tusculum with Cade Bell, went to Western Carolina as a redshirt freshman and a redshirt sophomore. He was a leading receiver each of those 2 seasons before he went into the transfer portal last year, ended up at San Diego State. But he wasn't eligible to play because he had already transferred once when he transferred from Tusculum to Western Carolina. And so he wasn't able to play, so he sat out for a year. And as soon as that year ended, he went into the transfer portal. So he got a free year of school from San Diego State for, I guess, scout team work, and that was about it. And he went back into the transfer portal. At Western Carolina, he was very good. He was the leading receiver those 2 seasons. It looks pretty good. I mean, he looks on film like he's pretty good. He's got, I think he's bigger than Sincere Lee. He's taller than Lee. He's bigger than Tyreek Robinson, too. I don't know if I would call him a big receiver. I think he would be average or below average in Pitt's room right now, just based on height. But he was really productive at Western Carolina, but he's never played at the FBS level before, let alone the Power 5 level. I guess I have to condition myself to call it Power 4 now, right? Is this what we're saying? We're saying Power 4? But he's never played at that level, and he hasn't played in a game in 2 years. You know, he didn't play at all last year. And all of those things are a little bit concerning to me. And I look at the receiver room, and we had a question in the mailbag about this, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. I wrote about it in the 321 column this past week. I look at Pitt's wide receiver room for the 2024 season, and I just can't help but think that the guys who are really going to lead that group were on the roster last year. I don't want to completely discount the possibility of getting contributions out of Lee or Williams or Robinson or Montero, but it just feels to me like it's going to be Konate Mumfield as the leading receiver again in receptions. Maybe Kenny Johnson as the leader in yards or touchdowns or something like that, like a split like they had with Mumfield and Bub Means last year, where Mumfield led the team in receptions and Means led the team in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. I could see a split like that. I think Kenny Johnson will take some steps forward to become a really good receiver for this team, and I think he showed some signs of it last year. And Dejon Reynolds will continue to sort of fill in where the opportunity, when opportunities come up for him. And then your next group, I think some of those guys from last year's recruiting class, I think all the guys from last year's recruiting class have a chance to be really good. Lamar Seymour and Israel Polk and Zion Fowler-El. I think they have a chance to be really good, in addition to Kenny Johnson, of course. And so I think those guys will play. And I think they'll certainly play before Montero and Robinson get out there. But I'm not really sure how, Lee and Williams fit into that mix with those guys. I think your top 3 is Mumfield, Johnson, Reynolds. And it's a question of how you fill out the depth behind them. Who's number 4, who's number 5, who's number 6. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if number 4, number 5, and number 6 were, in some order, Seymour, Polk, and Fowler-El. I think Williams is a little... I think they're both intriguing. I mean, they're both fast. They both, have been very productive at a lower level. But just Lee's size concerns me, and Williams' time off concerns me. It not concerns me to the point that they're going to hurt the team, but just I don't know if they're going to be. I mean, I guess they'll probably be top 6 guys. I don't think they'll be top 3. And I'm talking about partially in terms of production and partially in terms of just who plays. But I think the top 3 is pretty well set, and those guys will have to they'll file in somewhere behind those top 3. And this is my presumption about it sitting here on January 23rd. It could very well change after spring ball and we see what these guys can actually do. Maybe they light it up. Maybe their familiarity with Cade Bell's offense comes through and gives them a real leg up, and they make plays, and they're some of the leading receivers on this team. I'm just not sure if I see it. And I think there's probably a question of how much did Pitt need at receiver this offseason? Not to say that they took too much, but if we're going to talk about whether they got what they needed, I mean, you have to start with the question of what they needed. I think what they needed, if anything stood out about the wide receivers that they needed this offseason, it was a true number one wide receiver. I don't know if they have that coming back, like that true number one. Maybe Kenny Johnson could become it. Maybe one of those other guys who were freshmen last year could become that. I don't think any of this year's offseason additions will be that, at least in 2024. And so if that was the one thing they really needed, I don't think they got it. I think they got some good players and nice players and players who can contribute, and from the transfers, guys who have been productive. There's no question. If you put up the list of the leading receivers at Western Carolina over the last 3 years, Sincere Lee and Raphael Williams are right there at the top. Can they do it in the ACC? Can they do it at Pitt? You'd like to think, and I think a lot of us believe, talent will transfer. Talent can transcend levels. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out with these wide receivers when they get on the field in 2024. Don't forget, we'll be live tonight after Pitt, Georgia Tech, right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Tune in for the live postgame show. We'll talk about it. We won't go too late. You'll still get to bed at a reasonable hour. It's a 7:00 game, and so we won't have any. You won't lose a lot of sleep, but you'll get to hang out and chat for a little bit. I might even get out the bourbon, even though it's a school night. Might even get it out. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then, of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Can't wait to talk to you tonight after the game for the postgame show. And then we'll be back tomorrow morning for another Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.